Start streaming. Seems to be working so far. Let me go over here to videos and no. This is my problem with YouTube. I never know where the fuck the video is actually at. Channel. Yeah. Not featured. There we go. Live now. Ha! Yeah, I just had to refresh the stupid page. And let me post this to these guys so they actually see it as well. Bloop. Yeah, I know. It's great, isn't it? It's only like $60 too. Yeah. No, I just want to enter. Yes, that worked. Okay, great. Excellent. Yeah. And then also, I should have chat visible, so... Okay, blah versus blah, close enough. Okay, I think it should actually work pretty well. For the most part, let me go back to OBS. Here we go. Okay. Yeah, and I don't do intros or anything quite that fancy. I probably could, but meh. I just kind of start whenever I want to start. But it's live currently, so you should be able to see it too, right? Okay. Yep. Yep. And currently, it should look like I'm talking to myself. So it's probably really weird, yeah. However, there's a reason that I'm talking to myself, seemingly. Because I'm actually joined with a friend of mine. Here we go. Mike, who's located nearby, who I invited on to help me discuss random topics. You and your...
You mean just as I was taking a drink of coffee?
You and your coffee. Meh.
I'll drink later.
Oh, okay. But it's almost 9 o'clock now, so... So, I was thinking about starting with Citadel, since we might as well.
Sounds good.
So if you wanted to, I can switch my screen for what you see to mine, so you actually see what I'm talking about.
Okay.
Citadel, share. Oh, and can you see it?
I can.
Awesome. So I've been evaluating an email server because we currently use Colab, but that server has some issues. It's running in an LXC container, a virtual container, like a Docker image, basically. But the developers of Colab didn't take into account some of the problems that a container would have like that. So I'm looking at switching it to a full VM, a little heavier weight, but more full featured. So since I'm going to be switching it, I might as well look at some of the alternatives out there. One of them I've been looking at for a while now is Citadel. They've been around for a really, really long time. They seem to have an AOL login available. That's weird. Whatever.
Didn't AIM already get discontinued, or is that coming soon?
Yeah. If it hasn't been discontinued already, it might as well should have been, because who the fuck uses AOL?
I know Yahoo's finally actually getting rid of their messenger.
Okay. Yeah. Nobody would use them anyways, so why in the hell would they keep them around? So it's kind of weird.
Either use Discord or Facebook chat or
exactly.
That's pretty.
Or Skype or Kick or Snap, Fuck, or whatever they're called. Yeah. But yeah, you can log in with those, I guess, if you want. User super secret password of password, because it's running on a local VM. So the login page, it drops you to a lobby, and I'm not really sure what Citadel's trying to do with this whole suite. View as bulletin board, view as mail folder, view as a blog. It's weird. So one thing that I had looked at already are the notes. And you go to notes and add new note. And it gives you this little drag and drop thing. And I'm just perplexed that anybody would still use this. But Mike, you were mentioning that you actually use this style of notes currently, right?
Hang on.
That anybody would still use this. But Mike, you were mentioning that you actually use
too many windows, too many computers. All right. Carry on. You were saying.
So you were mentioning the other day that you actually use these style of notes still to today.
Yeah. Actually, on one of my work computers, I still use them more as kind of like things I need to not forget, and usually things that I will forget before I like shut down my computer or something, which is on a rare occasion, usually only to do updates. So usually that way, whenever I close everything else out, they're right there on my desktop saying, hey, do these things.
Okay. And the thing that it's draggable and movable, is that a feature that you find useful?
Yes and no. It gets a little quirky when you have multiple monitors and you're docking and undocking, and when you have multiple notes. Like, I usually keep right around 3.
Oh, okay.
Any more than that, and they start just kind of randomly getting chucked across the screen, which is not very helpful.
Yeah, because Colab currently has a note feature, but they're just line items in a journal, basically, that you can give due dates to, you can add various meta information to, but they're not draggable. It's like... Yeah. And looks like there's only...
I can see where that would be potentially useful.
What the... That's weird. Oh, enter doesn't actually save. Fail. It looks like you can change the color. I mean...
The resizing functionality is really nice with those. Because then I can have like a long, narrow note that has just a couple things at the top that I need to keep in mind.
If it worked half decently.
Yeah,
it just kind of jumps.
Well, it's probably jQuery UI, so...
Yeah, exactly. Not really the greatest. Yeah. So that was the one thing I did actually look at that I found odd. Because I didn't think that any current computer system actually used this style
Windows
of notes.
10 still comes with its stock.
That's mind-boggling.
Actually, I think, yeah, Linux Mint comes with a thing called Tomboy Notes. which looks remarkably similar. Let me actually switch back to the computer that I'm demonstrating here, and I will open that up. Give me just a second here. Share my screen. I remember where exactly I do that. Okay, share screen. Okay, so Tomboy Notes.
Mm-hmm.
I've never actually used it on here, but it's like you can do kind of the same thing, move them around, resize them. They actually look a lot more advanced than the ones that are built into Windows, so
Not
that's
surprising there.
kind of neat. You can export HTML. You can do, and I don't know if that's something that Citadel provides, but you can actually do bold, italicized, strikeouts, etc. In the sticky notes that are built into Windows, but you have to know the hotkey to be able to do it. Like, there's no text editing functionality.
Oh, Windows doesn't actually show you that?
No, it does not.
Well, that's lovely. Yeah, at least with Tomboy, they give you UI that you can actually see it and see what to do.
Yeah. Anymore for actual notes, I was using Zim for a little while, just because I'm getting to where I prefer to be able to version my notes and do it in GitLab or GitHub if I ever decide to publish stuff publicly. But lately I've actually started using BoostNote just because the UI is so much prettier and it's nicer than Zim. The one thing I like about both of them is they're cross-platform, so I can use it on Windows, and then I can actually like version my notes and synchronize them between different computers, and I don't have to rely on something like OneNote or Evernote like I have in the past.
Right.
Obviously, with it being Markdown and everything, it's not as easy to just like copy and paste an image in, but most of the time my notes are text-based anyway, so.
Markdown does have support for images if you know the format.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is you have to actually manually put in the syntax. You can't just copy and paste an image like you can in Evernote or OneNote. And you don't have the like web clipper functionality like both of those services have.
Yeah, copy and paste usually does well enough for me anyways. So, or just copy the URL.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess people are still using that style of note, but I haven't in a while, so I found it odd. The other thing, it seems to have address book with this really, really bad UX. Like, this is straight from 1992. I mean, I guess it might. I guess it might work. What the fuck? You click save and it goes to basic commands, list chat rooms. What?
Looks like it took you back to the main like dashboard.
Yeah, that's weird. No.
It seems like an error.
Okay.
Maybe no groups.
What? Subject block? What?
I thought you were creating a contact.
Yeah.
Sending an email.
I mean, that's weird. Huh. Yeah, so I guess there might be maybe some potential with this program, but the UX on it is so horribly outdated that I couldn't even bring myself to recommend this to anyone.
What about theming or styles? Is there not much of a marketplace for it, or do they have pretty decent documentation so that you can make your own?
I don't think so. I haven't really looked into that though. Nope. Okay. Yep, good. Because they do have some documentation, application layer protocol for the Citadel system. What? That's just weird. Coding style, spam assassin. Looks like extremely low end or low level documentation.
Yeah.
No themes. Coding style. That's it, though. So, not really.
That's unfortunate.
Yeah. And even the screenshots they provided are, yeah, not great. So, the nice thing with it is it was able to install pretty easily. I just ran the command that they provided. It was a bash one-liner script that after I installed the dependencies of build essential and a couple little tiny packages, it just went right in. It was pulling from an unsecured URL, which was a little concerning because they have an easy install.
Oh yeah, I can see their site up top does not have the HTTPS.
That too. And also, the command to get started is you curl HTTP,
Oh yeah.
no S on it, one red flag, easy install.citadel.org/install, pipe it directly to...
Yeah, pipe it directly into shell, because what's the worst that could happen?
Right, yeah. No problem at all. So that was another little concerning thing, because if anybody would have hijacked this domain or this path, they could have injected whatever they want. And because they recommend to run it as root...
And pipe it directly into...
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, so easy install, but not the most secure install.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think... oh, wait, add new. There we go.
You did mention that it does work with like OpenLDAP and everything.
Supposedly.
Supposedly. I didn't know if you'd messed around with that at all or not.
No, I have not. It does not come with OpenLDAP of any sort, but it supposedly can link to it. So... Yeah, really not impressed at all. So for comparison, our current
I have used Colab in the past.
Yeah, our current system we've been using is Colab, which it has a much prettier website. Documentation is decent. The install guide has a bunch of different processes. So let's say on Debian 9, which is what I installed it on, they have full repositories, and granted they're still not SSL, but
Repos seem to be slow to adopt that.
yeah. But they do at least require the GPG key for packages, so
that's good.
But one of my thoughts was source code. They are still on version 16.1, and the current sprint in the development tree is sprint 2016-40, which I can only assume is the 40th sprint from 2016.
So it looks like it kind of went stale.
Yeah. Yeah. Started 2016.
Last time I checked, it is post October 14th, 2016 at 5 p.m.
Yeah, it's a little past that. Yeah, and especially since the sprint is a 2-week iteration, it's a little behind schedule. So that also pushed me to start looking at other options too, because if I reinstall Colab, it's going to be from 2 years ago, which I prefer to have a more updated version. But if there's not, then there's not. So yeah, that was kind of my thought on that whole thing. There we go. I should come back. Yeah, did you have any email server recommendations for what I could look at?
I have not actually looked into that. As I said the other day, I've just kind of sold out and I just use Gmail for everything now. It's just so much simpler.
Yeah, which Gmail is a decent option. Like it's pretty solid in their offering. But one issue that I had with it was trying to switch. If you have multiple accounts and you're trying to, let's say, check your email on your corporate and watch a YouTube video on your personal, it's just not going to let you.
It gets really confused really easy.
Yeah.
And I usually have at least 3 accounts that I have like signed in, so yeah, it gets. I usually always it's almost habit now. The first thing I do when I open a new tab and I go to a new service to do something is, which account am I logged in as?
Yeah.
That way I know I'm doing the right thing with the right account.
Yeah, and then all of a sudden, like your corporate employers getting recommendations for death metal songs. Like,
yes.
Not the greatest. Halloween on the lake. Okay. Just got a notification. Halloween on the lake. Man, lakes are always fun. Halloween's fun. Yeah. Okay. So Citadel looks pretty aged and pretty mediocre, wouldn't you say?
Yeah. It looks like it hasn't really been maintained in the past 10 years.
Yeah.
So, when did you say it was last updated?
Citadel is actually pretty recent. They tend to keep their stuff up to date.
It's just one of those. They evidently are just a bunch of programmers and no designers on the team.
And they've not looked at any other website in the past 10 years. Because I have a colleague that...
Which is ironic, because they have jQuery UI obviously running to be able to get some of that stuff working. You would have thought they would have been like, let's throw some Bootstrap or Foundation on this.
Yeah, and I have a colleague that always gives people a hard time, because if they're not designers, the very least that they could do is load up Bootstrap.
Yep, and I am not a designer. That is why all my sites are on Bootstrap.
Yeah, which I have issues with Bootstrap otherwise, but there are better frameworks or front-end frameworks out there that you can pick from.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know how many of them are still active under development, but I know Foundation is still a really big one. Bootstrap. I was thinking there was HTML5 boilerplate. I don't know if that's still around. That was one of the earlier ones.
It kind of is, but it just provides you with like the DOM elements.
Oh, okay.
But seeing that all browsers now support HTML5, it's not too big of a deal.
Yeah, I'm sure there's still several out. I'm not familiar with them because I'm not in that realm as much as I used to be.
Yeah. Let's see if I can remember the one that I use. Yep, there it is. So the one that I use is called bourbon.io. That's the website.
Oh, okay. Yep.
It's the website itself isn't very good, and it actually just links back to GitHub. They used to have actually a better website. It's weird. I'm not really sure what happened.
I was gonna say, isn't Bourbon a SaaS tool?
Yes. Yeah. But their take on design is that you have these built-in features that you can do, like you can assign colors and you can create functions to categorize buttons as such. But then they follow a traditional CSS approach where you keep your design element separate from your markup elements. So the HTML just contains your data. You don't have to go into your HTML and give it an A has a class of large, rounded, blue. Because that's shitty. Like, your data should not dictate how it looks. With Sass or Bourbon, you don't have to. You can go in and you just have your button, your A.button or whatever. And then using CSS like it was meant to do, you can stylize that button however you want to.
But what if you want to do different like styles for different things? Like, say you want to have a P class that, or excuse me, a P element that you want to have that is one style, and then later in that document, another P element that's a different style. That's kind of why, I mean, say you want to change the color or something. I mean, obviously you could do it with this div dot.
Well, in that case, you provide a schematic or a semantic tag to the paragraph. So you have a paragraph dot first, or paragraph P class equals first, or whatever class equals introduction, and then the next one is class P class equals whatever you want, and your markup is descriptive of what it actually is. And then in your styling, if you have this one that should be a different color, you just target that one using its descriptive tag. But again,
I prefer classes. They're just so much simpler. I know exactly what I'm doing whenever I'm doing it. I don't have to try and think of, do I have this structured properly in the document. It's just like, all right, well, if I'm styling it this way and I want it to look this way, I just do this.
Yeah, but it's not an MVC-friendly approach, because you're contaminating your design and your data together.
Yeah, but most templating engines have support for that functionality, so...
Which is why they fail, because they shouldn't, because they shouldn't do that.
I know Jekyll uses the Liquid templating engine, which seems to work pretty well.
Well, Liquid, I'm pretty sure, is designed for static resources. Like,
yeah, well, yeah, Jekyll is static content. So.
Right. Yeah, I've seen that in documentation building, where it'll build documentation for your application, export it to HTML static pages, and then you can wrap it in your Liquid template or whatever.
Yeah.
So, did you want to chat about anything in particular?
Well, I did actually have some things I took some notes on that I figured we could talk about. One thing was browser extension security. Since recently there was a popular file sharing site that had a vulnerability in one of their extensions. It's not so much a vulnerability as it was compromised and was... I haven't actually read the article that Brian Krebs put out, but it was Mega that had the issue, and their Chrome extension was potentially stealing usernames and passwords from the looks of it. Browser extensions, I think, are one of the aspects of security that are often overlooked, because lots of people have them if they sign into their browser, and if they do things like development and that sort of thing. They do simplify troubleshooting and development processes and workflows, but I don't think they're often taken into consideration from a security perspective, because they're not actually like software installed or applications installed on the device itself. And the reason I bring that up is a few months ago, one of the more popular Chrome extensions, the Web Developer extension, which has all sorts of useful features, and I don't even remember that much because I haven't done that much programming lately, but it has different like viewports set up so you can test in different screens to see what everything's going to look like. I think there's even like a color droplet to get specific colors off the screen. There's a bunch of different functionality that just makes things a lot simpler, even more than just the developer tools built into Chrome. And that extension, somebody had phished the developer for that. And I want to say there's hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of installs of that particular extension. And someone had phished the developer, got their credentials, and put a little bit of malicious code in the extension, and then pushed it to production and published it.
Mm-hmm.
And as a result, the way Chrome handles extensions, or the way, at least the way it used to back then, anytime there's an update for the extension, it just goes ahead and installs it. It doesn't actually wait for any sort of approval or anything. Like when Chrome itself has an update, it tells you, hey, there's a new version of Chrome, you need to restart or reload Chrome. With extensions, it just does it.
Mm-hmm.
And because of that risk, and you can't count on the developers either selling the code or potentially not having multi-factor authentication or weak passwords or stuff, basically protecting what you're using to introduce in your environment, it's something that I think really needs to be evaluated from a security perspective in any company, and even as individuals, but more so for corporations.
Yeah, it certainly. You mentioned that add-ons to your browser isn't software, but in a way, it is software.
Yeah.
Because it's executable code that you're getting from a third party that can do whatever it wants to do. So in the Mega example, we actually have a snippet, or a SirHack on Twitter posted a snippet of what it's actually doing. So part of the plugin from the Mega downloader, it checks if the details.url.includes live or login.live.com, and if the method is a post, it takes the form data of login and the form data of password and posts that to their third-party server. It also does github.com/session, posts the data, the username and password, accounts.google.com, and I'm sure there's more in there as well.
Wow.
So yeah, it literally goes through and checks your URL, and if it matches what it wants to grab, because it's all publicly visible in the realm of your browser.
Yep.
And as soon as you install a browser plugin, one of the permissions it asks is view all content on all websites across all tabs, which is a very dangerous permission.
Yep.
Because it can do stuff like this. I have noticed with Firefox, they have addressed that. One of the new permissions that they can request is access to content on a specific URL. So for the Mega example, if he did it correctly, it should have been that it requested access to only the Mega site, mega.co.nz or whatever it is.
Yeah, I think it was .nz.
Okay. And so if he would have done that, or if he would have had that permission in the application, this would not have worked, because the extension would not have had access to live.com and to github.com and to google.com.
Yeah.
Just, it would have been blocked. Still, if somebody got a hold of the code and uploaded compromised code, they still could have modified the permission set, but maybe that would have set off more red flags.
Yeah.
So.
And yet another, not that it technically couldn't steal session keys too, but it looks like it was just stealing credentials. So if you have multi-factor authentication set up for those accounts, even with the username and password, they shouldn't be able to actually get into the accounts.
Yeah.
Unless they're stealing session keys, which it's only a matter of time before somebody's like, yeah, we'll just do that.
Oh, you mean how most sites, as long as you have the valid session ID, which is just a simple string that's posted in the request, you can enumerate and imitate somebody else, another user, without needing their username and password?
Yep, that's the one.
Yeah, that's always a fun trick. Just grab the session token, use it in your browser and see if it works. If the site's coded correctly, it should notice that your IP address changes between what it was expecting and what you used it on, and it should block it. but not guaranteed.
Yeah. Of what websites do you think out there actually have that implemented? What percentage?
I recently implemented that feature on my framework. Cause
What
that
about Joomla or WordPress or
no, probably not.
Drupal?
Yeah, highly doubtful. With WordPress, it might work with one of the security extensions. I'm not sure exactly what all it will do, but I'm sure there's probably a plugin that will fix it for you. But again, you're back to plugins, and as long as somebody gets access to that repository of a non-WordPress official developer, they can inject code into a server and back to square one.
Yeah.
So one way you could get around it is if you require package signing. So the developer has a private key that they sign their packages with, and they publish the public key to whoever wants to use that package. And when they download the code, they verify it with their public key. And if it was changed from the original creation, it won't work because basically the checksum isn't going to match what the private key said it should be.
Yeah.
That would be one way to alleviate the problem.
That's true. And that brings us to validating checksums of software, period. I know that's something I actually have gotten to where I do regularly anytime if it's provided by most open source software actually does come with the checksum, so you can verify, for one, that the download didn't corrupt, but you can also actually validate the code is what it says it is, especially when it comes to binaries.
Yeah.
Or ISO images.
That's another big one, yeah. Mint had a problem a few years back about that.
Yep.
Somebody was able to upload a compromised ISO image or CD image. Yep. So when somebody installed an operating system, they actually got that plus their bundled in spyware that somebody added in.
Yeah, which if I'm not mistaken, it was basically like just tunneling all the internet traffic to somewhere else.
Could have been.
I think that was what the vulnerability was.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Speaking of tunneling traffic to somewhere else, one great security usage is a VPN tunnel. It will encrypt all of your traffic, even if it's not encrypted, send it to a third-party server or a DigitalOcean droplet or someplace that you can control or that somebody else controls. So that way, if, let's say, your internet service provider is monitoring your traffic, they will not be able to see what you're actually browsing to. So if you're in a country that doesn't like what you're looking at, or if your employer doesn't like you to look at stuff, or some example of that, you can use a VPN to get around that, to encrypt all of that, to get to a place that's not censoring you, and then go out. Unfortunately, there are some companies that have purchased VPN providers, like big VPN providers, and they're forwarding the traffic like they should, but then at the end point, they are also looking at what you're doing, and because they have access to every single bit of traffic that goes across that line, they can see everything. They can see every request that you do and every website that you go to and everybody that you chat with. And there's a company recently that got caught doing that, wasn't there?
Yes, there was. There was a couple of VPN clients that were actually doing that. NordVPN, and I'm trying to remember what the other one was. And then I believe Opera now comes with a built-in VPN, which I think there was also an issue with that not too long ago, if memory serves correctly. Not that, everybody's out there using Opera, but...
Right. Yeah, Opera's had that feature for a while. They sold it as a mobile acceleration utility where they would compress your images and compress video and make it a smaller request so that your mobile device would be able to see the page quicker and you'd use less data.
Speaking of like end-to-end encryption and everything too, and browser extensions along that same line of things, the key-based browser extension also, which is supposed to be and supports an end-to-end encryption, going to actually keep all the messages properly secured. There's an article on Bleeping Computer about it. I haven't actually skimmed through everything, but essentially third-party JavaScript could read the things that were basically through there just like with any other extension. But the whole concept of it being end-to-end encryption, everybody thinks that means basically that you have total privacy, but depending on the service that you're using, that may not necessarily be the case because you're relying on them to provide that. Just kind of like with the VPN providers that were listening on the traffic and snooping on the other side. You're, especially with free VPN, there's a lot of free VPN providers out there that will allow you to get past filtering and that kind of thing, but they're making money somewhere, and it's probably by selling the information that you're using or that you're passing through that tunnel. Proton VPN was the other one. So it was NordVPN and Proton VPN that had the privilege escalation vulnerability in their VPN clients too.
Okay. Yeah, that's another thing many people don't realize. Although I feel that people are starting to learn is that free services, if you're a business, you have to make money somehow. You have to have some sort of a product or an offering to make money with. And if you're providing the bulk of the publicly visible features for free, well, somebody's still making money off of that somehow, because otherwise they wouldn't provide that for free. So what that ends up being is that all of the free data that people can freely post, they're actually selling back to advertisers and marketers and
if you are not paying for the product, you are the product.
Yes. Yeah. And even Google's Gmail has been caught doing that.
Yep.
They will sift through your email messages and look at keywords to better sell junk to you, to better cater advertisements to you. Because if you get a bunch of emails talking about your upcoming boat trip to the lake, you'll start seeing advertisements on the side and on third-party websites talking about boat supplies and travel and holiday and
lake destinations.
Yeah. But again, Gmail is free. So
which I use G Suite, so that's I'm paying for that service too. So that's different class. I'm not saying that they're still not filtering through stuff, but
yeah,
there's still a little bit of more of an expectation of privacy when you're having a business account and you're paying for the service than when it's free.
No. No. They do offer that. That is part of their government package. The government email package runs on different servers. They don't bundle in the advertisement tracking software. So they do actually offer that, but not to the general public.
Well, I don't get that many exciting emails that much anyway, so
yeah.
Most of those people are probably bored with me.
Yeah. And then if you really
want... their algorithm isn't very useful because I also have an ad blocker, so I don't see the ads.
That too, yeah. Yeah, which is a great extension to have, but again, it's another extension.
Yep. Speaking of shady URLs, there was a conversation that we were having about recently. I saw on Twitter where somebody was basically went out and bought a domain because they thought it was actually hilarious, and they were trying to poll to find out what exactly to do with it. And the URL that they came up with and was able to purchase was risky.af. And for those of you out there who are not familiar with the AF abbreviation, it means as fuck. So basically, a risky as fuck URL. So what one of the suggestions was use it as like a tiny URL type service. And then somebody else shared the fact that there's already one of those out there, and it is called ShadyURL, which is fantastic. I have not actually played around with it, but that is a Fedora test page, Charlie.
It was, yes. No, that Fedora test page was risky AF.
Oh, okay. Well, I guess he's got it running on a Fedora server now. That's fantastic. But somebody had mentioned that there's already a ShadyURL service.
Called ShadyURL.
Their tagline is, don't just shorten your URL, make it suspicious and frightening. And the example they give is taking CNN.com and turning it into 5zb.info/hot-older-goats.move. Some more nonsense, and then IP stealer. So there are still people on the internet that have a sense of humor. And when it comes back to the URL minimizing, shortening services out there, always like check what those are before just wildly clicking them, because they're fantastic for sending people unsavory things. I know personally I used to use them all the time to send people the let me Google that for you links, because that was always mildly entertaining to me. But there's also people that are a lot more malicious and may send you malware or something else in that form.
Okay, I'm another example of what you mentioned.
We evidently have a very exciting show right now. There's one person watching, and it's me.
Well, so it'll be saved for future use also. So, you know, there's that.
Did you find another entertaining URL shortening service?
No, I'm going to demonstrate. Yeah, what? No, go away. Fucking pop-ups.
Do you have a malicious browser extension?
Yeah, it's called Bitly. So, to demonstrate kind of how URL shortenings fail at some points in time, I'm going to send you a link. So if you wanted to click on that link and so it's just bit.ly/LQT6ZT. So you have no clue what it actually is, which is unfortunate, because it could be anything.
Okay, and we'll just go ahead and share this screen as I do this. Okay. And I think my system just locked up and decided that this was entirely too many times of me sharing my screen. Maybe, maybe not. Looks like I've frozen. Have I frozen?
No, I still see your video.
Still don't see my video?
Yeah.
You don't see my screen though, right?
No, I don't see your screen.
Evidently Firefox decided that I'm done sharing my screen. So I'm going to pop out and let Charlie invite me back. I will return.
Local. Oh, and you can even listen to it on Spotify. How about that? They have a lot of different deviations of that song. Not surprising, but boop. Hang up. That's peculiar. Hey!
Hey, evidently I'm back.
Audio is a little borked, though. Yeah. Yeah, it's a little off. Mm. Are you still using Firefox? Hmm. It's still very amplified, it sounds like. No, it's amplified. Sounds like the boost is way up. Hmm. Okay, technical difficulties with Google. A little better. It's still a bit echoey, but it's certainly better. It's actually kind of too loud. Hey, that's perfect. Yeah, now I can turn you up. Okay.
All right, yeah. Wouldn't be a test drive webcast doing this for the first time for either of us if we didn't have some issues, right?
Right, yeah. That's part of the fun of it.
Exactly. So, now that little Bitly link that you sent me.
Yeah.
Let's see if I can't share my screen this time. Okay, there we go. So we will expand that link. Trust level is gray. And it looks like it's a video for YouTube. I get the feeling I was about to be rickrolled.
Yes. So that is one issue of Bitly is that you don't know what's actually behind that. Because it
Which is where something like Link Expander is a fantastic tool.
Yep. Because all of a sudden you very well may hear.
Are you playing it right now? Or working on it?
I just played a snippet. Can't do too much, otherwise it'll get flagged for copyright.
Yeah.
But yeah, that could be really nice if there's a browser that would warn you about Bitly links and shortening links or redirects in general, and ask if you actually want to proceed to the redirected third-party site.
Yeah. Yeah, that would actually be a better service in my opinion.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's any of them out there that do that or not. I'm guessing not.
Probably not, but it's simple enough to check. Because like you mentioned, that third-party service that'll show you it. You can also do a terminal command to list it. I guess I don't need this running anymore, do I? Shut down. Window capture, create new. So let's see if I can remember the syntax. So, for example, wget will let you. Why are you so small? There you go. That's a little better. Will perform the request, and part of the headers that's sent back to you is the actual URL for it. It shows refer policy unsafe URL. Huh, that's interesting. And then evidently my nofollow tag wasn't correct because it followed it anyways, but that's okay in this case. Because it just echoed it out to devnull. But yeah, there are ways that you can check that. And anytime I get a kind of a risky Bitly link from an untrusted source, I'll run it through this real quick just to kind of see where it goes to.
Makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Usually I use something like Link Expander.
Oh, the command is max redirect.
Mm-hmm.
0. So that way you can see the max redirect, or the with max redirect equals 0. It grabs the location URL, but it doesn't try it because it's set to not follow redirects.
Just a second, Charlie. You're going to get to meet somebody.
Oh.
Charlie doesn't care about the others.
The mini-me,
Ah.
little Elijah, is more interested in my other screens, evidently.
Well, there's probably more going on the other screen than
Yes.
that screen.
Yeah, there's...
Yeah.
For one, I'm also over there, which is probably confusing. You gonna say hi?
He called me, so yeah.
Say hi to the internet.
Yeah, hi to the internet. He says Dada, that's about it. Everything's Dada. Me, my wife, the dogs. So he will be assisting with commentary. I don't know. We'll reposition the camera so that we're both in here.
Oh, there we go. Yeah, now you're actually kind of in focus.
I've not been in focus?
Well, you were being cut off a little. It's like if I switch to your full screen, you're being cut off by the lower third.
Okay.
Yep. So now it at least won't cut off your face, per se.
Yeah, but you've got the after hours thing across his face.
Well, I can
Not
always,
that he really cares.
I can always just do straight remote without it.
So one of the other things that I had on my list of things I wanted to talk about.
Yeah.
There were two other things I wanted to talk about. One was an article that came out this week on Bleeping Computer as well, that the Neekers botnet, I'm assuming that's how you pronounce it, sent out 780,000 emails with a weaponized IQY file. And the reason that I want to talk about this, because a botnet spitting out spam emails with malicious attachments really isn't newsworthy. However, what is newsworthy to me are IQY files. I don't understand why they even exist. Because, and I'm actually going to pull up the wonderful Google description of what exactly an IQY file is, just so that way I can read it, because it's so ridiculous. It needs to be verbatim what the actual description is.
Yes. And up until yesterday when you mentioned it to me, I had no clue what it was either. But that just...
Yeah, it's one of those where you see a type of file extension and you're like, why would you ever want to do this? And while I realize, yes, there's probably somewhere out there that's going to be like, oh, well, there's perfectly good reason to do something like this. I just don't get it.
No.
An IQY file, or excuse me, an IQY file extension is an internet query file format used by Microsoft Excel. Why are you querying the internet with Excel?
Well, so go into continue reading what it does, because just an internet query file
contains a URL and other parameters needed to make queries over the internet, allows for an ASP web page to be opened in Excel and saved in the program files Microsoft Office queries directory. So the reason that that's such a big deal is we get rid of things, or we try and get rid of things like macros and whatnot, but then there's files out there like this that have no business doing anything, in my opinion.
Yeah. And that brought a tangent yesterday to to a new feature that Microsoft is building into Excel. So instead of macros that have been plagued with issues because people have been exploiting them, they have come up with a new idea that people totally are not going to exploit. Did you want to go into their next feature?
And so they're going to be adding JavaScript functionality to Excel in a future release. And my only hope is that when it comes to, before they release it to like Office 365 and stuff like that, that they will at least provide like an ADMX file or something from a group policy standpoint that you can block it in enterprise environments. Like you can block macros and whatnot. But my fear is that that will not be the case, and it'll just be one of those, oh, look, we have a new feature. In this version of Windows Updates, we are going to show you how you can be exploited with an Excel document. And what I don't understand is why you need to use JavaScript in Excel. The formulas in Excel are very powerful. There is no need to try and use JavaScript to do more math. It does it fine on its own.
Pretty much. But at least nobody knows that, or everybody knows that nobody ever would use JavaScript in an exploit.
No, absolutely
that just
not.
Would never happen.
How many times have we mentioned something malicious JavaScript just in this like 45 minutes webcast or whatever?
Yeah. Well, let's see. So far, it's been used. We've chatted about XSS kind of browser extensions using it, and now Excel using it.
Yep.
No. Why?
Yeah, and sadly, if you actually start looking through and blocking file extensions for like corporate email to what to prevent in your environment, just block them at the gateway and quarantine them and don't let people release them automatically. And you start looking at the recommended lists, and there's actually several of them out there. And maybe later I'll find a couple of them and post them to the comments on the video, just because they are really good recommendations of like application type file extensions that most people don't think about, like PowerShell files, VB files, that kind of thing. But there's actually several of them for Office that are application type files that don't make any sense as to why you would have them to begin with. But when you start delving down that rabbit hole, you find more and more file extensions that it's just, you look at them and go, why?
Yeah. But at least with PowerShell, they have switched to an execution policy where no PowerShell scripts can ever be executed at all. Oh, unless you tack in set execution policy no enforce.
Yes.
Which is an option.
Which is also something you have to do sometimes for if you're doing them, if you have them on a file server and you're trying to execute them and they're unsigned because you wrote them.
Yeah.
You have the same issue.
Yeah, I know. I made a little management tool that helps me administrate remote systems, remote workstations. Mm-hmm. And the Unix one uses Python for all the tasks. But on Windows, I would have to go through a few extra hoops to install the PowerShell or the Python IDE. So instead, I used PowerShell scripts. And then I ran into an issue that, wait, these unsigned remote PowerShell scripts aren't trusted by the OS, so I couldn't run them. But then I realized I did some reading, and all I have to do when I invoke PowerShell is pass in this flag to set it to allow PowerShell, and then it'll run this untrusted PowerShell script with no questions asked. Because that's useful. Because like no attacker is ever going to set this one command flag.
There's a reason why living off the land is such a popular thing to do in pen tests. Tools like PSExec and PowerShell and WMI are so useful for administrators and attackers.
Yeah.
Are you providing your commentary as well?
Really? Yeah, you don't say, huh?
So then the last thing I wanted to talk about is actually going to be probably a full-blown discussion. So I believe they're the only ones to actually have done it, but about a month or so ago, HP and I believe, this is why I said I believe, they're the first actual printer company to actually offer a bug bounty for any vulnerabilities found in the printers. For anybody that actually deals with enterprise level security, printers are one of the #1 vulnerable devices on a network, and they're usually an easy target for attackers. So HP has been really trying to push their secure printer line, and one of the ways they were doing that is actually having the bug bounty. Well, I think it was about 2 weeks, and somebody found a way to exploit them. Since there was money involved, they started publishing the information. And the company was Checkpoint, and the exploit is known as Faxploit. And basically, what they found out that they could do is HP, specifically some HP inkjet printers, with how they receive a fax through like an analog fax line, and they process the image. It would actually execute code if there was code embedded in the image. So basically, all you had to do to be able to attack a target and compromise it, if you knew that they had a vulnerable device, is their fax number. And it's not like those are published or anything. So literally, what their proof of concept was is they sent a malicious fax to this fax machine, compromised it, and then because they were able to compromise that device, and then it also has network connectivity for printing, scanning, all that other kind of stuff, they were able to start scanning the network, and they pretty much used the Eternal Blue exploit on a Windows XP machine that was on the inside of the network to compromise it. So this brought up a discussion yesterday when we were talking about this. Not only is it a concern from the fax aspect for other vulnerabilities similar to Faxploit or what other printers and fax-related devices, whether it be fax server or something like that, may be vulnerable to, since it's such an archaic technology that's not really maintained properly anymore. And how many people have a firewall in their fax line? So I don't even know if that's physically possible or what that would entail, but it's an unprotected way into a network that somebody had recently discovered. But aside from that, since there is such a concern there, it brought up the discussion of printers themselves, with being such vulnerable devices. How exactly do you protect them or protect your network from them while still having a use for them? And I will actually let Charlie take it from here.
Yeah. So one aspect of red teaming is finding the ingress point for any attacking or attack scenario, be it digital, physical, whatever. Is in order to compromise a location, you need to find the weakest ingress point, or the point of entry. For example, a window would be a weak ingress point for a physical building, because you can easily break it. There may or may not be detection to detect that. For example, most networks are set up that you're monitoring ingress traffic. You're watching stuff coming in. You're watching stuff going out, because you're monitoring everything. With a POTS phone line, however, you don't have that. You have, at most, you'd have the DID coming in, which very well could be spoofed, because it's a carrier level trust situation where the carrier that supports that's providing the phone number, you're trusting that they are going to tell you what the number is. Unfortunately, with SIP and all of that, carriers are numerous and all over the place. So it's literally one-man shops hosting VoIP for someone that they are now a carrier. And so if one of their customers, or if they are advertising that the phone number coming in is, Washington, D.C., you don't have any verification for that. So even if you are doing phone number based or inbound DID based blocking, that it's trivial. And many people have had a similar situation with mobile, of telemarketers calling them from their local area codes, because it's just a spoofed number. They're just going into the dialer, typing in the number that they want to call from, and that's it. And it doesn't do any validation. So this fax thing would be the same situation. It's an ingress point into your network, and you can send data across it because you can send images. Faxes are data. It's one of the original, or one of the early methods of data transfer. Usually it's just images, but it's still data. It's still binary data. Pretty slow, but you can still transfer files over it and do everything. It's dial-up, literally. So, yeah, you are by having the service, you're providing the outside world, anybody with access to a phone line, an entry point into your network, which you can't monitor, you can't restrict. I mean, you can restrict it by unplugging it, which I recommend everybody does, because nobody in their right mind should be using fax transmissions anymore. But some people still do, for some weird reason.
I know a lot of law offices still use them just because I think for some reason that's still considered a legally binding contract, whereas digital signatures, depending on the circumstances, may not be. I think with things like DocuSign and stuff have improved that a lot, but I think there's still people who prefer things to be faxed. I think there's probably government agencies and stuff like that that still only accept that kind of thing. Yeah. Healthcare, I know, is still really heavy in it, especially when it comes to prescriptions. So, like, I think narcotics can only be faxed. I don't think they can be sent online. Because they either have to be faxed or they have to have a paper copy of a script.
Okay. So one way to protect yourself or protect a network from that is you segregate your network into VLANs, or virtual networks, so that the printer, let's say your workstation that you're working on, can talk to the printer to send jobs, but the printer cannot talk back. The printer cannot communicate to your laptop directly, or it cannot communicate to your servers directly, and it cannot communicate to the outside world directly, because why the F should it? A printer should never be trying to talk to anything else. So what you do to help minimize the damage that can be caused is you put those untrusted, unsecured devices on their own virtual network, in their own little bubble that they literally cannot talk to anything else in the world. And so that way, if somebody does break in and gain a foothold on that device, they're trapped in that little bubble that they cannot escape from. Because even if they fully compromise and gain root access on that device, there's an outside external firewall keeping them contained. Unfortunately, that's many times asking quite a bit of companies to set up virtual networks, even if you're asking them to set up 2 virtual networks, one for your printers and your phones and one for your workstations. And if you're running consumer-based hardware like a Netgear or Linksys or stuff like that, they don't support virtual networks, so you have no option to do that. Luckily, there are a few options, a few alternatives. pfSense is able to do that, and they have firewall appliances that you can buy and drop in that provide full virtual network support. Unify supports full network support.
MikroTik, which I'm a big advocate for.
Yeah, so
which I know they've gotten a lot of negative publicity this year just because of some of the big exploits to vulnerabilities that they've had. But if anybody actually follows like weekly vulnerability summaries, Cisco, I think, is probably close to 1,000 of them so far this year. So no one is without their vulnerabilities, but the thing I really like about MikroTiks and Ubiquiti's both is they're really cheap. So they're a lot more affordable for like your mom and pop shop type companies to be able to segregate stuff like that and have multiple VLANs. I mean, I've got a MikroTik in my environment right now for my home network, and I have like 5 or 6 VLANs just in my home network. So, but one caveat to the adding VLANs and separating traffic that way is I've seen a lot of places that do that, and they basically just separate it as far as a broadcast traffic concern. everything's still routable. So you actually have to have those filters in place to actually prevent them from talking. Like having VLAN segregation isn't necessarily enough.
Right. Yeah, you need to actually protect that traffic from not being routable.
And then one thing, you say that a printer never needs to talk to anything else. Mm-hmm. But what in the instance of a print server, someone having a fax server, the printer needs to be able to send and receive faxes, and a lot of that's done through IP now. And then also, what if they do a scan to email or a scan to a file server?
Then in that situation, you need to assess what the device should legitimately have access to. And if it's able to scan to email, then you should allow it to communicate only to your email server and only on the send email port.
Yep.
So at worst case scenario, an attacker could get a foothold in that and either send you spam email, which is a possibility, or exploit another vulnerability, but that vulnerability has to be through SMTP or through email only, because if you just provide them with wide access to only the email server, that might include SSH or RDP or anything else like that, which you're free game at that stage.
Yep.
You're just asking for trouble.
Yeah, and it's all about reducing your attack surface. The more you can reduce that, the better you can, and then you can monitor those types of things. So if you happen to see excessive traffic from your printer VLAN or a specific printer on your printer VLAN trying to do a lot of, and unfortunately in the case of a file server, and if you're not using FTP, if you're using it on a Windows domain, you may be using SMB for file transfer, which SMB is an unfortunate necessity in the Windows world. Not SMB version 1 per se, but
yeah, unfortunately, the Windows file sharing program, they've bolted on a lot of other stuff into it.
Yes.
So not only can you use it to share files, but you can also use it to authenticate to a remote server and to change credentials and to grab session tokens and golden tickets and all that fun stuff. So yeah, if you need to have a server be able to send files to a file server, just use FTP. Like, it's unsecure. There's no security to it. It's a very simple mechanism. You should never ever use it for public transport. But between your private network, or between two private networks, it's a better alternative because it doesn't have access to any of your user authentication, doesn't have access to any of your Kerberos tickets. So, again, you're minifying your exposure window, your attack window.
Yep.
And this is where professional MSPs come into play, like my company, that many times this is above the expertise level or the comfortable level of local system administrators. They're just not comfortable doing this. So an actual good MSP will be able to come into a business and train the local staff on how to better secure their stuff and what to look for, and be able to work with them and not just take everything over and keep it inside of a black box that their local staff can't see. Because if you're locked into a black box or a product that you don't have any visibility into, you can't improve your processes. Your staff can't be trained up because everything's happening from your vendor, and you just have to trust that you're doing it okay. But you don't have any visibility to that. And that's a big problem, because if your vendor's not doing it correctly, or if they have holes or whatever, you can't see it. So that's a big problem. And you were mentioning Unify devices. This is kind of a product plug, obviously, kind of. The Unify Security Gateway, it's this little tiny box that's about the size of your home router. It has a few ports. It has your uplink. It has your internet port. It has your network port, and it also has a phone port. Or I guess they've renamed it to WAN 2 That's interesting. Okay. It has an opt port that you can use for whatever you want, be it a secondary uplink or a phone system or a separate physical network. And it connects with a full management system with all of their other equipment. And the coolest thing about it, oh, come on, where's the price? Is that the total price tag of this full, legitimately enterprise-capable device with full VLAN support, $100, $120. So it's very comparable to even your cheapest Netgear.
Well, even like a Netgear Nighthawk or something like that's going to cost you like $160.
Yeah, exactly.
So I mean, it's actually cheaper than some of the gamer quality routers that are out there.
Yeah. Whereas this is probably going to have a better CPU, be able to forward traffic quicker than those Nighthawks can. So, granted, it doesn't have Wi-Fi, but they do have Wi-Fi devices available as well. Also, all managed from the central platform. So.
Microtix, actually, I haven't really looked at their routers in a while, but I'm actually going to, while we're discussing that, I'm going to pull up routerboard.com, and I'll show a couple of those and their comparable price tags. One of the things that I usually always stress about these devices is they're not just it's not just the VLAN capabilities and stuff like that. They're also capable of like dynamic routing, which for those of you who are, for those of you who aren't familiar with that, dynamic routing is like OSPF, BGP, RIP, when you're basically having multiple uplinks, or if you have like multiple branch offices for even a small business, sometimes they'll have multiple locations. You can actually have alternate paths if you have multiple ISPs, so that way you can still stay in communication with all your offices, even if one of your ISPs goes down. And like even, I'm not sure if the Ubiquity line is capable of it, but like the Microtix also support VRRP, so you can actually have redundant routers that are actually set up too. Like I've used in my home both RB 2011s and 3011s, and they both work really well. 3011 is based off of ARM architecture. 2011s are, in 2011 some of them have wireless as well, but they have MIPS architecture. There were some new ones that they'd come out with. Maybe it's the Hex line that are. Yeah, this one has an SFP, 5 ports, dual core 880 megahertz processor. So they're pretty powerful little devices for the price tag. Like a Hex S is $69. 2011 rack mount is $99. 3011s are around 120. They even have, let's see, oh, they even have a 4011 now, which has a quad core 1.4 gigahertz processor. That's $200. The thing that really I like about Microtix is even their like top of the line routers are still really affordable for like a small business or something. If you needed to have 10 gig capabilities, you can actually look, if you scroll down to the bottom of the router section, there is the CCR 1072 1G8S Plus, which are, thought you were sharing that, Charlie. I didn't realize you were
I'm switching
back to me.
I got it.
Okay. So that one's basically $3,000, and it has 8 SFP plus cages, which means you can have 8 10 gig interfaces. The other thing, it's not so common in smaller or residential type things unless you have a big internal network where you're passing a lot of bandwidth internally. But Microtix also support bonding for interfaces, so you can actually lag a couple interfaces together and have, instead of like a single gigabit port to maybe a file server, you can have 2 or 4 if you have a 4 gig NICs or something in your file server.
Mm-hmm.
Or if you have a larger switch stack, maybe you want to do 4 10 gig ports to your switch stack or something of that nature.
Yeah, another common
My
use
son
of
is evidently
that.
trying to escape.
Yeah, another common use of that is if you have 2 locations.
I'm sorry, what was that? He was screaming.
Yeah, I noticed. Let's say you have 2 locations. You have your server closet and a remote location, let's say a building away.
Mm-hmm.
You can have your bonded ports with 2 different paths to them, so that if a backhoe cuts one line, you have another backup line.
Yep.
We were using that for a while. We had our server closet or server cluster in a different room, and we had 2 lines coming back to us running 2 different paths, so that should one of them get cut, we still had the other, and each were able to provide full gig connection speed. And we also used the firewall, the file server. File server had 2 connections. Our virtual server had 2 connections, so they were able to utilize 2 gigabit connections at the price of 1 gig, basically.
Yeah.
So it helped quite a bit. The one drawback that I see with MikroTik is that they're not as user-friendly as Unified.
Very true. Ubiquity's got really nice, pretty UIs. They're all web-based.
Mm-hmm.
MikroTik, unfortunately, has they really push their Winbox interface, which is actually really nice from a GUI standpoint of having accessibility to everything in the router. However, it is a bit overwhelming if you are not tech savvy. And even in their web interface, I hate their web interface. I think I've only used it maybe 5 times. I have 3 certifications for MikroTik, and I've touched hundreds, if not thousands, of MikroTik devices. So, and I've only gotten into the web interface like maybe 3 or 4 times. Usually it's either CLI or Winbox.
Yeah. And
CLI is somewhat intuitive, but if you're familiar with CLIs. So if you're not familiar with managing Cisco or Juniper or Adtran or anything like that via CLI, it's not going to be very helpful. So unfortunately, the user functionality or the user friendliness of them is rather lacking, whereas Ubiquity has done a really good job of only putting the relevant information in front of you and tried to simplify things. But I also haven't used the Unify line too much. I'm back from the old Nano Station, Power Station functionality when they're older devices.
Yeah. When I manage MikroTik, I don't run Windows, so I don't have the option to run Winbox. It technically
you do. It runs in Wine.
Yeah, it technically runs in Wine, kinda, but there are some problems. And if I'm going to be doing that, the web interface, all of the functionality that the native application supports, the web application also supports. So there's no loss if you're running it.
All 3 methods are completely functional ways of handling it, because you can handle everything in Winbox, you can handle everything from the web interface, or you can handle everything from CLI. It's just, I'm personally more comfortable CLI or Winbox, because to me the web interface is just kind of more even convoluted than Winbox. Yeah. Which is kind of hard to believe because there's a lot of things going on in Winbox.
Mm-hmm. So I actually have a live in production Unify controller running, and the graphs that it can provide are pretty cool. This particular client, they are running a security gateway and a wireless access point, both from Unify, and they're both communicating back to my central controller. So I'm able to see network latency, so if their internet provider is running slow, I can actually see that. If they're having problems, I'll be able to see it, and I have the history of it. I can see the current throughput, along with if I don't trust it, like it last ran 22 days ago, I can issue a speed test right now, and it will actually go to the Unify security gateway, request it to perform a speed test against somebody, I don't really know who, and provide the results in real time. So if you get a call from a client who says that their internet's running sluggish, you can hop over here, perform a speed test, you can see that it's running at 105 megabit down, 12 megabit up, 13 meg. So you'd be able to use that to help troubleshoot their connection issues if that's the case. Yay. Okay. Yep. Total speed 106. Then it also shows you the WAN IP. So if they're trying to connect to the office, but the IP changes, you'll be able to see that. We do not have a switch for them, but if we did, the LAN would have more information. But as such, the wireless LAN just has a bunch of information to it. And I can see general throughput, an overview of devices, how many different types of devices are connected, all sorts of things like that.
Yeah, that's another thing that Unify or Ubiquity does really well is they have all these graphs and everything built right in. MikroTik, on the other hand, their graphing is rudimentary at best. You have to manually set it up for each interface, and it's not very pretty at all. It's better to use a third-party tool like Zabbix or something if you want to graph bandwidth across interfaces or CPU spikes, that kind of thing.
Yep. And then for managing the network, if you're managing their wireless network and your client calls you up and says, hey, we want to change the name of our wireless network, you can actually do that straight from the controller. Yep. So you can just go to some given connection, edit it. There you go. Change the name, change the security mode to it, whether or not they have guest policies applied, and they have a built-in kind of paywall that you have to type in a password before you can authenticate or before you can connect to the internet. So it's useful in this case because they don't want everybody in the area to be able to connect to their wireless, so they have a password that they change every now and then. And the client actually has access to this site for them, that they can go set the password to whatever they want, click save or click apply, and it's done. That's the extent of the difficulty for it, for them at least. You can also add some static routes, manage the networks, so it supports some basic VLANs.
Now, I see they have hotspot functionality. Do they have like walled garden functionality as part of that?
What do you mean walled garden?
Basically where you can only, if you connect to the Wi-Fi, you can only access like a couple different websites or something like that. Like maybe an internal website, like a marketing website or something, until you actually accept their terms or enter in a code. So say you can't just go out and check your email or whatever once you connect. You have to actually, you may be able to get to their site so that way you can access, like say for example, some local hospitals do it where, like for example, we'll just use ProMedica because they're big and well known in this particular area. If you connect to their wireless, it's going to sit, when you first connect, it's going to take you to a screen where you need to enter in either their password or accept their terms. You can still, however, access like their particular website. So you can go in and check like your patient records or see like hours of physicians or something like that, but you can't actually go to anywhere else on the internet or something of that nature. You can also set up like time limits, like they have to re-authenticate every 4 hours, 12 hours, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or every 20 minutes if you want to be like one unnamed location that's somewhere close in the Toledo area.
Yes, you can set the expiration to either 8 hours, 24, or days, or user-defined. And you can add pre-authorization access, where hosts can connect to a specific host name or subnets before authentication. So yeah, you can add in what you want them to be able to access. Again, it's pretty simplistic. It's designed to be easy to use and not powerful. So if you have a lot of weird intricacies, you might be better off using an external hotspot or external server instead. But yeah, for the basic small business, small to medium, it certainly provides enough functionality to to do everything you need to do for it.
Sorry, I was handing off the child.
Ah. Then it is a multi-tenant application. So from the same interface, I can control multiple systems, such as VLANs. It supports setting up different VLAN segregation on the box that applies to all unified type controllers. So here I've created multiple different networks inside my network, and I'm able. These also pair up with pfSense. So as long as the VLAN tag matches, everything just meshes well together. And it doesn't have to be Unify hardware. It can be running literally any hardware that supports standard VLANs. Again, as long as the VLAN tag matches, everything just grooves nicely. This one I do actually have more information about, because I actually have a switch running. So if I go into the switch, I can see what ports on the switch are active, what traffic each one has. It supports aggregation, like that's an aggregate port of probably that one. You can name ports different things if you want. You can see the different downlinks or different switches that are plugged into it, different uplinks, like where it goes to get to the next internet hop. So it is powerful enough.
Yeah.
Yeah. Again, the MikroTiks actually can do more functionality. MikroTik and pfSense can do more, but it's not as user friendly.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and I think from a like mom and pop shop type place, if they're going to be doing any of their own management, I would recommend Ubiquiti over MikroTik. But if they're going to do the MSP route, I prefer MikroTik.
Yeah.
One other thing you were talking about, the wireless and VLANs, being able to do VLAN segregation and stuff like that. That's one thing that's really important for a lot of like small businesses, especially when I keep referring to the mom and pop shop type places, because it's not so much an issue anymore, because most even home routers come with like a guest network setup to where it's actually separated by default from your internal network. But a lot of older routers, so when I was doing consulting 5-6 years ago, there was a lot of places I'd go into and they would have a like single Netgear or Linksys router, and their public wireless was the same wireless they had their POS systems running across. And that's extremely dangerous, because if they do have a password, it's usually like the name of the business. Mm-hmm. So it's very important to separate that traffic, because you never know what somebody that's going to come into your location or be sitting out there in a car in your parking lot that may just have enough signal off of your wireless, and what they're going to be actually doing. They could be sniffing all the traffic, because most of the time when I found those, usually it was the default credentials to log into the device. So once you get on the wireless, it's trivial to gain complete control over the entire network. Mm-hmm. So being able to separate that out as a separate VLAN or something, and having those like time expiration policies and everything is very beneficial from a security standpoint as well.
Yeah. Yeah, Unify supports basic VLAN traffic, so anybody who connects to, let's say, the guest network, they get tagged as this VLAN. Yep. And then in your firewall, you just apply rules to that VLAN. So anybody who connects to the guest, they'll only have access to what you deem them to have access to, such as they can only go out to the internet, and that's it. Yep. They can't see anything on your standard network. So, yep.
I think that's all I have from a discussion topic point of view for today. I'm not sure if you had anything else you wanted to discuss.
I don't know. Let's browse over to Reddit and see if there's anything interesting going on. Looks like WPA3 specification is being drafted. Cool, yeah. I guess. Okay.
That was pretty much the response to crack vulnerability for WPA2.
Oh, okay.
They made a patch, but they also decided, you know what, there's probably some implementations here that just need to be rewritten since technology's changed.
Yeah, that makes
So
sense.
WPA2 has been around since, what, 2003-ish?
Something like that, yeah. Well, even if they do come out with the implementation standard tomorrow, it'll still be 20 years before everybody supports it, so...
Well, yeah, and you won't even have devices off the market that'll actually support it for... Because it's actually, if I'm not mistaken, it's going to be hardware-based, a lot of the changes. So even the routers, the access points that are out there now won't even support it. It'll be the next gen of those devices before they start implementing it.
Yeah. Somebody posted a passwordless authentication wallet. Whatever that is. Oh, hacking the Raspberry Pi camera web interface. Okay. Guess you shouldn't have your Pi publicly visible anyways.
You know, we can always have a discussion, maybe like next time we do this, about the things you can find on Shodan about things that shouldn't be on the internet.
Yeah. Yeah, we actually, I'll need to look up, see exactly where it's listed. But yeah, we have a little, I'm not sure if it's Ruby or Python. Might be Python. Script that will sift through Shodan for port 3389 and grab a screenshot of it, I believe. And then it'll just cycle through all of the different computers that have remote desktop enabled, publicly visible, and as kind of a public wall of shame. That was entertaining to see.
I would have to actually log into my Shodan account on this computer to be able to show some things, because there was actually if you go to Shodan and go to the images, you actually have a Shodan account.
Yes, I do. Yeah.
If you're actually logged in, you can pull it up. I'm not logged in on this computer because this is my field laptop. We just recently got this set up, and next time when we do this, I'll probably be on the main computer, so that way I can actually be looking in the same general area rather than keep looking off to the right to look at my other screens and see what's going on. Because this is just a single monitor laptop right now, and we just configured everything and tested it yesterday. But if you go to Shodan, there's actually like, and under the images section, there's screenshots of people's computers for RDP that's exposed to the internet, and this is like the logon screens from even like XP machines and all the usernames, and it's priceless. Not to mention all the other ridiculously connected devices that shouldn't be.
So I have never actually used Shodan. But I'm logged in. So under Explore...
yeah, I'll actually pull it up on where I can actually log in.
Looks like we have industrial control systems. That's always fun.
Yep.
Add cams. What? That's weird. Oh, webcams. Okay.
Yep.
Oh, the best IP cam search somebody created. Default password. Yeah. So yeah, it looks like people have this SQ webcam in Germany, Pittsburgh.
Yeah. So if you scroll up, go to the View All at the very top.
Oh yeah.
No, I mean at the very top of the web page. If you scroll up and go to View All.
Yeah. Oh, there are images. That's cool.
Yes. Yeah, you're a few seconds behind. If you go, or what I'm seeing is a few seconds behind. So if you go to images and just basically let the thing load, it's priceless. So this is the kinds of things that are connected to the internet.
Yeah. That are publicly available with no authentication and no security.
Yeah.
Like, hey, here's the guy's house.
There is a server 2003.
Oh, and it even shows the location. That's awesome.
Yep. Yeah, that's Shodan for you.
Yep. Public wall of shame. That looks like a nice house, though.
There's a bunch of XP machines on page 3.
Page 3. Oh, yep, there's XP. Yep.
There is an open SSH session on was this page 6?
What? How the heck does that work? Like,
I'm guessing they have like VNC or something on there, and somebody was in there just administrating and it took a picture.
no, because it's running port 22. Oh, and VNC. Yep.
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 There's a random picture of Adele. Oh no, I guess that must be somebody's wallpaper. Yeah, Shodan's a fun place. Maybe we can have a little discussion about that one of these times.
Yeah.
Oh, you actually went to it, so I was right. It was VNC too.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yep.
That was my assumption.
Mm-hmm.
You never exposed VNC to the internet, folks.
No.
Bad news.
Never.
RDP, VNC, SMB, your camera.
Webcams, yeah. Unless it's pointing towards like your public park or tree or squirrel or something that you don't care if everybody in the world sees. Because if it's publicly visible...
You know what? That's what we need. We need more cameras that are attached to squirrels that are on the internet. That I would enjoy watching.
You know, you could devise something with a Raspberry Pi, a Pi Zero, a battery, and a little webcam for it.
Yeah.
The only problem is that when the battery runs out of charge, how do you catch the squirrels to recharge them?
Need to find some of those wireless charger things for the batteries, and then just have a platform, basically, that you put like an ear of corn or something on, and then the squirrels go eat the corn. While they're there, they charge up the batteries.
That'd work.
Think we can get a Kickstarter campaign for this?
Would it be Squirrel Cam or something?
Yeah, sure. All right, well, I think I'm going to call it a night. It's 11:45, so we've been doing this for probably close to 2 hours now. Maybe we can do it again next week and have a little discussion of Shodan and maybe some other stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That sounds good. So, since we were chatting about squirrels, my outro is going to be appropriately as such.
Foamy?
No, not foamy. Something, although that would be interesting too. I recently rediscovered Foamy. I didn't realize he was still making stuff, but he is.
Really?
Yeah.
I haven't seen anything Foamy related in like 10 years.
Oh yeah.
Or at least it seems like it.
They do live streams.
Oh God.
They do weekly live streams. Yeah.
Wow.
It's awesome. But no, the outro that I believe I'll use is from Rick and Morty. Are you familiar with the show?
Oh yeah, I love the show.
Yeah, it's pretty good. So on that note,
why are you making me do this for you again?
Who doesn't wish they could talk to animals, Rick?
Most humans. There, I'm done. Just stay out of trouble.
Waiting.
Gotta keep moving, can't stop, up, down, up, down, up, stop, down. The queen needs food. The babies need food. The queen makes babies.
The situation in Argentina has proven less convenient than predicted.
Yeah, we'll have to re-destabilize their economy, refocus labor class outrage from upper to middle, foster a coup, and install a compliant regime.
Same as Guatemala?
Yes, but you can double time it.
We need a quorum
I had forgotten about this scene.
in case the Exxon Monsanto thing falls through in Africa.
Why not use chemtrails? Put a canopy on Uganda. They're set to agitate any What?
That kid is watching us.
So, we're squirrels. He's a kid.
He's watching us like he hears what we're saying.
That's
Hey, kid.
awesome.
Young man, come here, little boy. Tell Daphne to run a 199 on a possible Doolittle. Little boy, we'll give you wishes if you can hear us. We can make
was
you
this
fly.
actually in the show?
It can be.
Or
Yeah.
is it an out? Okay.
Yeah, I've watched all 3 seasons. I can't wait for the next one.
I know. Hey, Comedy Central renewed, so.
Me!
Yep.
Rick!
Morty, what did you do? All right, Morty, pack your shit. That's only gonna keep him down for a little bit, Morty. You f***ed with squirrels, Morty. We got a good 5 minutes before they're backing up on our ass, Morty. We have to pack up and move to a new reality, Morty. You know, I said we can only do that a couple of times. We're f***ed over here because of these damn squirrels, Morty.